Hello everybody, this is Albert with Green Tea House. I hope you're doing well today. Today we're going to offer some tips and some advice as to whether or not the people that you're buying loose leaf tea from, either in retail or online, are maybe not either smart in knowing how to prep their tea, or maybe they're just trying to boondoggle you, as they used to say. Now before we begin, if you haven't done so already, come visit us at the Tea House. I'm over here visiting my mother in Houston, so Casey's over at the Tea House as I'm recording this. Also, subscribe and hit the notification bell so these episodes come to you, and post a comment. Now, there's little telltale signs that you can look at whether or not you're going to a large retail store that might offer 100 to 150 loose leaf teas, or you're buying it online. Clearly, buying online can be problematic because you just don't know what you're going to get. It's like buying apparel from Amazon. You buy a sweater, you buy a dress, you don't know how it's going to fit, right? Luckily, you can return it if you're doing Prime. But tea online is kind of the same thing, but in some ways it's worse because many times you can't return that tea, understandably so, once you opened it. So I want to give you just offer some little glimpses onto whether or not a place knows what they're talking about when they sell their tea. No particular order. Number one, the packaging. Now, the packaging is important. If you see any place that sells their tea and anything that's translucent, transparent, that's a problem. That's a problem. Why? Because tea suffers from photodegradation, meaning sunlight will degrade the tea. Now, by the time this episode comes out, Casey and I switched out our glass samples from the sniffy station to stainless steel, and that was always our intent. We just couldn't find ones that we really liked. And there's certainly a visual aesthetic to showing the teas in glass. But photodegradation really happens, especially to the lightly to no oxidized teas, like greens, whites, yellows. And so what happens is they lose a color and they lose their potency. So on the sniffing table, we'd have glass, but everything that we package, of course, is closed. So if you are at a tea store and they're selling their retail tea, whether it be in translucent bags or even maybe it is like a craft envelope with a window to show the tea, now, because anyone who sells tea should know that tea needs to be completely opaque. The packaging needs to be opaque. The other thing about the packaging, it needs to be at least zip tight or able to close. It can't be opened up, or some sort of they roll it in a pouch. Maybe at a farmer's market, they put the tea in a bag and then they cinch it with the safety. But no, it needs to be airtight. The way they sell it needs to be airtight because again, air, sunlight. We've talked about in the episode on how to store your tea, humidity, putting your teas next to spices. All these things can really ruin your tea. So look at the packaging. The packaging needs to be stainless steel. Number two, or needs to be opaque. Number two would be the brewing instructions. The brewing instructions can really reveal a lot. I remember not that long ago, my sister-in-law showed me a package of tea, and I read the brewing instructions. Brewing instructions were all wrong. They were steeping too long and too hot for a green tea. And the common person won't know that. Right? If you I love tea, the way it was 10 years ago, I love tea. And if they're telling me to package, steep for 5 minutes at full boil, okay. We had a class in June called Rehabilitating the Image of Green Tea, and we talked about that at that class, how a lot of Americans don't like green tea, and understandably so, because they've been brewing it the wrong way. They've been doing tea bags at full boil and oversteeping it, and it's going to get really astringent. So it's not the person's fault, it's the provider of the tea. And look, if somebody's telling you should do a black tea at full boil instead of pu'er, or instead of 200, or they're telling you to do pu'er at 200 instead of full boil, there's a little debate on certain teas. But if someone's telling you to steep a green tea for 5 minutes, they really don't know what they're talking about. They really don't. Another one is the presentation of the tea. For example, gunpowder green should be wrapped like a ball. That's why it's called gunpowder green. The British called it that because the Chinese roll it into a little ball. And really expensive gunpowder is going to be imperial pinhead, where it's wrapped into really tiny balls. So if you look at a gunpowder, and again, this is loose leaf, not in tea bag or pyramidal sachets, but if you look at a gunpowder or a Moroccan mint, which is made from gunpowder and peppermint, and you look at the green, and the green is just chopped up leaves instead of it being rolled, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. Also, if they're selling oolongs and the oolongs are not wrapped in a knot, that's pretty much why oolong is oolong, aside from it being mid-oxidized, but that's one of the classic features. So you can kind of look at these things, and it helps if you know, like, what's the classic look of gyokuro, or what's the classic look of gunpowder, or what's the classic look of white peony. It certainly helps if you know these things. If you don't know these things, it doesn't really help. But if you're, for example, buying loose leaf green tea, that loose leaf green tea should not be chopped up into pieces. That's what they do with pyramidal sachets. Tea bags, it's all the sawdust. But in pyramidal sachets, you're not getting rolled up sencha. You're not getting rolled up gunpowder. You're not getting the fried wok thin consistency of Longzhen, right? They're just chopping them up. So again, the appearance of it makes a big difference. So when you're looking at teas, these are clear signs. The other ones is like the ingredients. The obvious one is ingredients. If you're looking at the ingredients for something, and I mentioned, if it's a tea, like a blend that you cannot find in nature, you know they're spraying it with natural flavors, or even artificial flavors, or whatnot. And I get it. There's a lot of people who like sweet teas, so they're looking for the dessert teas that are like white chocolate, peppermint, coconut, blueberry, white tea. Okay, that's going to be sprayed with stuff. And some people are totally fine with artificial and natural flavors being sprayed on their tea, as long as they taste good. But always look at the ingredients. Always look at the ingredients. If you're looking at a chai, classic Indian chai, masala chai, it should be black tea, cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, ginger. It should be no natural flavors to amp up the taste. You'll see that with a lot of the dessert teas, right? Because the dessert teas are there to kind of mimic a dessert flavor. So when you are looking at your teas, I would tell you go for the more pure stuff, and then look at the ingredients, and the ingredients should not have any natural flavors or artificial flavors. Look at that. The last thing is, it does help if the more specific information they give on the packaging or on the website, the better. So if they're telling you where it's plucked, what cultivar it is, what region, like is it in Shizuoka, where sencha is largely grown, and they're telling you it's in Shizuoka Prefecture from this tea master, plucked on this date, the more specificity that they give, the better it is. The better it is. You kind of see this with apparel, like they'll be like, oh yeah, this is cashmere. Cashmere. Oh, it's only $49.99. It's cashmere. If they're not telling you where it's plucked, what grade of cashmere it is, and whatnot, then you know it's probably not good quality. So the less information that they're putting on the packaging, that's a little shadier. So look at all these things. Look at the ingredients. Look at the packaging, whether or not it's translucent, whether or not it's sealed. Look at all these things, the brewing instructions, and all these things will kind of give you an indication of whether or not you're getting tea from a decent provider. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and God bless.